Today was the day my husband, Mark, was scheduled to return from his business trip. I had woken up early, showered, and was now waiting for him in our bed, a quiet hum of anticipation filling the room. His packed suitcase sitting by the door always gave me a small pang of sympathy. His trips were never short, they were long stretches of 10 days, sometimes even 2 full weeks. His luggage was a testament to that, always filled with everything he needed to set up a temporary life in another city. As I climbed out of bed and walked toward the suitcase, I had the thought to help him unpack before he finished his shower. It was one of the small, simple ways I enjoyed taking care of him, a gesture of welcome. I pulled the zipper, opening the lid, and then my body went rigid. There, nestled among his neatly folded shirts and trousers, was an article of black lingerie. It was delicate and lacy, and it was most certainly not mine. It had the distinct look of having been worn. The fabric held faint creases, and there were subtle signs indicating it had been used recently. I just stood there, staring at it, completely stunned. The image of another woman wearing this piece of clothing, of her being close to Mark, pierced my heart like a shard of glass. I clutched the lingerie in my hand, my knuckles white, trying desperately to push away the flood of sickening thoughts that were beginning to overwhelm my mind. We had known each other since we were in college. We had grown up together, navigating everything from school and first jobs to marriage and parenthood. He had always been a loving and attentive husband. Even after our son Leo was born, he never stopped treating me with tenderness and affection. Our family life was calm and peaceful. We were, by all accounts, a happy family. He had absolutely no reason to look for comfort elsewhere, but there it was. That piece of black fabric sat in my hand like a silent accusation, threatening to unravel every single certainty I had about my life and my marriage. Just then, the bathroom door opened and Mark stepped out. He was wrapped in a towel, his hair still damp from the shower. I could tell from the way the towel hung on his hips that he was naked underneath. He walked toward me with that familiar look in his eye, the one that always signaled he wanted to be intimate. His gaze then fell to what I was holding. For just a split second, a flicker of pure alarm flashed across his face. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. He composed himself and let out a light chuckle. "You're not going to believe this," he said, his tone dismissive and casual. "Some of the guys at work thought it would be a riot to play a prank on me." He shook his head as if he couldn't believe their immaturity. "Can you believe they slipped that into my bag before I had a chance to notice?" He knelt down in front of me and gently scooped me up into his arms, carrying me back over to the bed. I was still clutching the lingerie. "Is that really just a prank?" I asked, my voice quiet but firm. He smiled and reached up to brush a strand of hair from my face, his tone soft and loving. "What's this? Are you saying you don't trust me anymore?" I searched his eyes for any sign of a lie, but all I found was the same comforting warmth I had known for years. He leaned in and kissed me, effectively silencing any further questions I might have had. His lips moved to my ear, and he began whispering the sweet things he always said when he was trying to make up after a disagreement. He had done this many times before. Whenever I was upset about something, he would deploy his charm, melting my anger and making me smile again. As he held me, murmuring those tender words, my resolve started to crumble. Maybe I really was overthinking things. But love is a selfish thing. It can't easily ignore a flaw, no matter how small. Even though I tried to convince myself to let it go, every time I closed my eyes, the image of that black lace reappeared. I kept picturing him with someone else, and the thought was eating away at me from the inside. After several days of this internal torment, I came to a decision. I had to know the truth. The next morning, after he left for work, carrying his briefcase and giving me his usual goodbye kiss, I waited until he was a few steps down the street. Then, I quickly slipped on my shoes and started to follow him. I maintained a safe distance, never getting closer than about a block, making sure he wouldn't spot me. I watched him drive his car into his office parking garage, saw him go up to his company's floor, and at the end of the day, I watched him drive home alone. On the way, he even made a stop at the grocery store to pick up my favorite kind of fruit. Watching his normal, predictable routine, I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. He seemed to be the same man I had always loved and trusted. But the shadow of that piece of lingerie still loomed large in my mind. I followed him again for several more days. Each time, nothing out of the ordinary happened. It really started to seem like I'd been completely wrong. Relieved, I returned home one evening and finally made peace with myself. I cooked a large dinner, preparing all of his favorite dishes, hoping it would serve as my own quiet apology. He came home, ate with me, and then he received a call from work and had to leave again. I stayed behind, alone with nothing to do. I picked up my phone and started scrolling aimlessly. Almost by accident, I opened my son's social media profile. And there, staring back at me from the screen, was a post that made my heart stop beating. My son, Leo, was in middle school at a boarding school, so I had bought him a phone early on to make it easier for us to stay in touch. He often used his social media account to share little bits and pieces of his daily life. One day, as I was scrolling through his recent posts, I found several messages where he expressed his gratitude toward his father and someone he referred to as Aunt Chloe. He had even posted pictures of the gifts they had given him. Aunt Chloe. The moment I saw that name, something inside me tightened. A woman sending gifts to another person's child, calling herself their aunt. That just didn't feel right to me. There had to be something more to it. I clicked on my son's profile and began scanning through the list of accounts he followed. It didn't take me long to find a woman's page that seemed suspicious. I tapped on her profile picture and started to look through her recent posts. All of them were filled with photos of romantic moments, fancy dinners, trips to scenic locations, cozy scenes at home. But in every single picture, the man's face was never shown. He was either turned away from the camera or cropped out of the shot, almost as if his identity was being deliberately concealed. I enlarged the images one by one, studying every little detail. Then, I noticed something that sent a chill down my spine. The man's build, the shape of his hands, even the specific model of the watch he was wearing, it all looked exactly like Mark's. My heart began to pound in my chest. A wave of panic surged through me. Without thinking, I grabbed my car keys and drove through the pouring rain to my son's school. I called for him to come out and waited under the awning until he appeared. When he saw me standing there, he looked genuinely surprised. But as soon as I asked him about Aunt Chloe, his expression soured and turned impatient. "Leo," I asked gently, "when did you meet Aunt Chloe? What is her relationship with your father?" He shifted uncomfortably and looked away from me. I pressed him a little further. He finally snapped. "What kind of relationship could they possibly have? If you really want to know so badly, why don't you go ask Dad yourself?" With that, he turned to leave. His words hit me like a slap in the face. I felt a chill run through me, but then I reminded myself that he was still young. He probably didn't understand the full weight of what was happening. My anger softened into sorrow. I reached out and took his hand. My tone was serious but calm. "Sweetheart, if Daddy really did something wrong to Mommy, would you come with me? Just the two of us, we could start over together, okay?" My only hope now was my son. If Mark had truly betrayed me, I was prepared to walk away from everything. But I would not leave my son behind. I had carried him for 9 months and raised him with every ounce of love in my heart. Surely he would stand with me, but to my absolute horror, he shook my hand off and took a step back. "I don't want to go live with you. If you want to leave, then go by yourself. Daddy and Aunt Chloe come to see me all the time. They bring me food and give me money. I love Daddy. If you leave, I'm staying with them." I stared at him, completely speechless. "How can you talk to me like that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I'm your mother. I never imagined my own son would choose that woman over me." My eyes filled with tears, and he looked away and muttered, "You're always yelling at me. I don't want to be with someone like that. Dad just doesn't love you anymore, but he still loves me. I want to stay with him." Then he turned around and ran back into the school building without so much as a glance back. I stood there watching his small figure disappear through the gates, and I felt my knees give out from under me. I sank to the ground, unable to hold myself up any longer. In one single night, I had lost everything. My husband, my son, my entire world. I sat there in the pouring rain, sobbing uncontrollably as the cold water soaked through my clothes. The rain and my tears blurred together, and before I knew it, the overwhelming pain caused me to faint. When I finally regained consciousness, I slowly pulled myself up from the wet ground. I began walking aimlessly through the empty, rain-slicked streets. The rain felt icy, like tiny knives slicing against my skin. But that physical pain was nothing compared to the deep wound left by my husband's betrayal and my son's coldness. I don't know how long I walked. Eventually, I found myself back at my own front door. I took a deep breath, brushed the rain from my face, and turned the key in the lock. It was late at night in our quiet bedroom. My husband was already fast asleep. I stood by the bed, staring at his peaceful profile, and a wave of pure hatred surged through me. How could Mark sleep so soundly after everything he had done to me? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. My entire body began to tremble with fury. Without a second thought, I stormed into the kitchen, grabbed a large kitchen knife from the block, and walked straight back into the bedroom. I stood completely still at the edge of the bed, staring down at him. Memories of his promises flooded my mind, promises that were once spoken with such tenderness. He had said he would love me forever, that he would never betray me. He had even sworn that if he ever wronged me, he deserved to be struck down by lightning and die without peace. Mark, these were your own words. You said if you betrayed me, you would die a terrible death. If I were to kill you tonight, it would be nothing more than fulfilling your own vow. That thought made my grip tighten around the handle of that knife. The murderous intent in my heart grew darker. I muttered under my breath, Mark, maybe in your next life you'll learn how to be a decent man. I raised the knife, my hand trembling, ready to bring it down, but in that exact moment, a flash of lightning lit up the room and my eyes fell on a photo hanging on the wall. It was our family portrait, and in the center of it, our young son was smiling so brightly, so innocently. My hand froze in midair. If I killed Mark, the law would not forgive me. I would be arrested. I would go to prison. And what about our son? He was still so young. What would happen to him without either of his parents? My heart began to soften, the rage giving way to sorrow and fear. Just then, Mark stirred in his sleep. In a groggy voice, he asked, "What? What are you doing?" He rubbed his eyes and looked toward me. His gaze dropped to the knife in my hand. I panicked. Startled by his sudden wakefulness, my words came out clumsily. I was just thirsty. I wanted to cut some watermelon. As soon as the words left my mouth, I felt a sudden wave of exhaustion. My legs gave out beneath me and I collapsed to the floor. Darkness closed in, and I lost consciousness again. When I opened my eyes, it was already the next morning. Mark was fully dressed. His suitcase stood packed by the door. When he saw that I was awake, he walked over with a smile and said, "I have to go on another business trip. Take care of yourself while I'm away." With that, he grabbed his suitcase and left without looking back. I watched his retreating figure disappear down the hallway. There was something about the way he left that felt rushed, almost panicked. A quiet suspicion grew in my chest. Could it be that he knew I had discovered his secret? I didn't say anything. I kept my thoughts to myself, but unlike all his past trips, this time he never sent me a single message. No texts, no calls, nothing. I knew then that he was cutting me off completely. He must have been shaken by what had happened that night. Maybe it scared him. Maybe it triggered his guilt. Whatever it was, he didn't dare come back. And if he wasn't coming home, there was only one other place he could be. He must have gone to her. Determined to uncover the truth, I quit my job and rented a small apartment across the street from his office building. I even spent several $1,000s on a professional camera with a telephoto lens, just to make sure any photos I took would be clear and irrefutable. Day and night, I waited near his company, camera in hand, but I found nothing. Just as I was starting to doubt myself, wondering if this was all in my head, I saw him. Mark walked out of the building, laughing and chatting with a woman. Their body language said it all. It was obvious they were more than just colleagues. A surge of adrenaline shot through me. I picked up my camera and followed them from a safe distance, blending into the afternoon crowd. They never noticed me. I tailed them to an apartment complex not far from the office. It was one of those modern buildings commonly rented by young couples who worked nearby. I watched as the two of them entered the building with ease, And to my shock, they unlocked the door to one of the units using a fingerprint scanner. They had been living there together for quite some time. That much was clear. I took note of the apartment number. Then I turned around and quietly went home. I had the photos I'd taken developed. The woman in the pictures was tall and strikingly beautiful. She could have easily been mistaken for a model. I couldn't understand why someone like her, blessed with such good looks, would choose to chase after a married man and risk being labeled a homewrecker instead of finding a decent man who truly loved her and living a peaceful life. As I stared at the photos, hatred surged once again in my chest. I knew that if I wanted them to pay for what they had done, these few pictures were far from enough. So early the next morning, I went to a nearby electronics store and bought a small hidden camera. That evening, I arrived outside Mark's office right on time, just before he got off work. It wasn't long before I saw him walk out, hand in hand with that woman. The sight of them being so openly affectionate made my teeth clench with anger. I wanted to run up to him and slap him across the face, but I reminded myself to be patient. If I wanted revenge, I needed solid evidence. I forced myself to swallow the fury and quietly followed them, camera in hand. They soon got into a car, so I quickly hailed a cab and told the driver to follow them. The couple stopped at a Western-style restaurant inside a nearby shopping mall. From behind a large pillar, I watched as Mark gently stroked her hair, picked out food for her with care, and even kissed her right there in front of everyone. My chest ached watching them. My eyes burned, but I held the camera steady, recording every second of their affair. After dinner, the two of them seemed to be in great spirits. Mark even bought her a gold necklace from one of the jewelry shops nearby. I instinctively reached up and touched my own bare neck. Tears began to fall without me even realizing it. I had scrimped and saved for years just to make life a little easier for him. In all that time, he had never once bought me something so nice. And now, without even blinking, he was buying expensive jewelry for another woman. That moment hardened my resolve. I would not let this go. I would make them pay. After browsing around a bit more, they headed back to their apartment. Just as I was about to leave, I heard laughter and playful voices coming from inside. Soon those sounds turned into moans, low and suggestive. I stood there frozen, the last remaining bits of hope inside me shattering completely. My heart went numb. The fire of revenge now blazed brighter than ever. I needed more, clearer, undeniable proof. Eventually, my chance came. That day, just like before, I followed them to the entrance of their apartment building. Right as they were about to go inside, Mark's phone rang. "Yes, I'll be right there," he said after answering. Then he leaned forward and kissed the woman on the forehead. "My boss needs something. I'll be back soon, baby," he said tenderly. "All right," the woman replied, wrapping her arms around his neck and whispering sweetly. "I'll be in bed freshly showered, waiting just for you, you little fox." Mark chuckled, clearly delighted, and playfully tapped her on the nose before reluctantly walking away. Once he was gone, the woman turned and punched in a code on the keypad. The door clicked open. My eyes widened as I quickly memorized the numbers. After all this time trailing them, I finally had the door code. Usually, Mark used his fingerprint to unlock the door since he was cautious and believed fingerprint access was safer than a code. But the woman was clearly more careless, and her mistake became my opportunity. I was just about to pack up and leave, satisfied with the day's gains, when suddenly a man appeared out of nowhere and wrapped his arms around her from behind. She glanced back, recognized him, and her face immediately lit up. The two began kissing passionately, and, shockingly, her body leaned into his, moving eagerly in sync with his motions. I was stunned. It dawned on me that Mark might not be the only one she was seeing. Maybe she had more than one man wrapped around her little finger. A wicked sense of satisfaction rose in me as I thought about the betrayal Mark himself was unknowingly enduring. Without wasting a second, I pulled out my camera again and started snapping photos of the scene unfolding before me. After a passionate kiss, the man spoke first. He said with a playful grin, "Chloe, that kid Mark sticks to you like glue every day. I can barely get close to you." So, her name was Chloe. Chloe pouted, her voice filled with mock frustration. "Boss, you're the one to talk. If it weren't for the backup plan, I would have never gotten close to him in the first place." Thank goodness you arranged for me to be his secretary ahead of time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to win him over so quickly. The man laughed and replied, Well, you can't blame me. My wife at home is a real beast. She would have torn us both apart. As he spoke, he began kissing Chloe all over her face without the slightest restraint. Their conversation was like a slap to my values, shattering everything I once believed. It turned out Chloe had been the boss's mistress all along. But to avoid a scandal if things went too far, they had planted her by Mark's side. That way, if anything went wrong, Mark would take the fall. He had become the perfect scapegoat. And what was worse, he seemed to be enjoying it. Serves him right. Then Chloe tilted her head and asked, Boss, did you send Mark away on purpose? She really was sharp. She had seen right through his plan. The man smirked and admitted without hesitation, Of course I did. I had my assistant call him back to the office. He'll be stuck there for at least 3 or 4 hours. Saying that, he scooped Chloe into his arms and carried her into the bedroom with a wicked smile. He added, Baby, I missed you so much. This time, I'm going to make it unforgettable. As the door shut behind them, the sounds of their lovemaking quickly filled the room. I couldn't help but wonder what Mark would feel if he knew the woman he had thrown away his wife for was now tangled up in bed with another man. Time passed slowly before the room finally fell quiet again. Once I saw them leave, I quietly opened the door using the code I'd seen and stepped inside. I placed a small hidden camera inside a cabinet across from the bed. There was no need to stay any longer. I returned to my place, waiting patiently for the right moment. The next day, just as I expected Mark and Chloe would be getting home from work, I opened the monitoring app on my phone. Their figures appeared on the screen, just as the camera had captured. Chloe sat beside Mark with tears in her eyes and said softly, Darling, what should we do? I'm pregnant. Mark looked stunned for a moment, then quickly pulled her into his arms and said with conviction, Don't worry, I'll take responsibility. Pregnant already. I was startled. Then Mark suddenly pulled back, a hint of doubt in his voice. Wait, this baby is already 2 months along, but 2 months ago, I was on that business trip. His question hung in the air, and in that moment, I could see something shift in Chloe's expression. She jumped up and playfully hit him on the shoulder. You silly. The boss said that business deal was really important. Remember, he sent me with you on the trip. And that very first night, you drank too much and had your way with me 7 or 8 times. Have you already forgotten? Mark thought for a moment, then chuckled sheepishly and scratched his head. How could I forget? You were so eager that night, I couldn't even push you away. Watching Chloe defend herself so confidently made me pause. People with guilty consciences often speak the loudest. Maybe the baby wasn't even his. As I continued watching, Mark was showering her with affection, clearly wrapped around her finger. He leaned in, kissed her neck, and gently pushed her down onto the bed. His hands moved quickly, unbuttoning her blouse as he whispered sweet words. Chloe responded to every touch, her body swaying in rhythm with his movements, her voice soft and breathy with pleasure. I stared at the screen. To say it didn't hurt would be a lie. My heart ached, but I held back the tears, so Mark no longer meant anything to me. What I was seeing now was just evidence, tools for my revenge. Soon the two of them were fast asleep, wrapped in each other's arms. I took a few clear screenshots from the video feed and printed out the images. I also made sure to save the entire video to my phone. In this age of the internet, standing up for yourself has never been easier. I gathered all the evidence I had collected over the past few days and put it together into a single file. It included both of their full names, their occupations, their home addresses, and most importantly, proof that Mark was a married man. Wanting to make sure as many people as possible saw it, I paid someone to help share and comment on the post. In no time, the story went viral. The entire platform was buzzing with talk about their affair. But public shaming alone couldn't quench the bitterness burning inside me. I took it a step further and sent a formal complaint letter along with the evidence to Mark's company. With the pressure mounting online, the company's leadership, fearful of damaging their reputation, decided to fire both Mark and Chloe. Watching Mark being escorted out of the company building, his shoulders slumped and his eyes dull, brought a rush of satisfaction I couldn't deny. I stood in front of him and said, "Did you think about this moment when you were doing all those things?" I wanted to sound calm and collected, but when I met his eyes, my tears came despite myself. Uh, Chloe's expression changed immediately. She glared at me, her voice filled with fury. "It was you, wasn't it? You're the one who leaked everything." I looked straight at her and said, "Yes, it was me. So what? You're shameless." I meant every word. I had no respect for women who destroyed families out of selfish desire. Not hitting her was the last bit of decency I could hold on to. Mark stepped in front of her protectively. "That's enough. Don't speak to Chloe that way." And in that moment, I knew he had made his choice. He would stand by her, not me. I could hardly believe it. More than 10 years together, and I was nothing compared to a new fling. "You're a coward, Mark," I shouted, my voice trembling with rage. "One day you will regret everything you've done." He remained calm, unmoved by my pain. After a pause, he said flatly, "Chloe is pregnant. I have to take responsibility for her. Let's get a divorce." Divorce. I stared at him, stunned. The word echoed in my ears, sharp and cold. Seeing me frozen in place, he continued, "This is my fault. I'll leave everything behind. I won't take anything with me." Then, without another word, he took Chloe's hand and walked away. He never looked back. I watched their figures disappear down the street, and a wave of emptiness washed over me. I thought I would feel triumphant seeing them pay the price, but instead, I just felt hollow. Maybe what I couldn't accept was being left behind. After pulling myself together, I went home and tried to return to a normal life. A few days later, Mark called me. His voice was filled with anger. "Sarah, did you release those photos? Was the complaint letter from you too?" There was no point in lying. Yes, it was me, and it was your well-deserved punishment. I could hear the fury building in him. "I shared a bed with you for over 10 years, and this is how you repay me? You ruined my job. You ruined my life. Chloe was right about you. You're a vicious woman. No wonder our son hates you. You deserve everything that's happened to you." Then Chloe's voice cut in, full of venom. "Sarah, you monster. Why don't you just drop dead?" My hands trembled. Tears streamed down my face. I tried to speak, to defend myself, but the words just wouldn't come. I had poured my heart and soul into this family. But in the end, my husband called me cruel and my son said he hated me. Was I truly such a failure? It didn't end there. Mark reported me for installing hidden cameras and I was taken in for questioning. I spent a few days in the police station, waiting and wondering how everything had come to this. When I was finally released, I walked out feeling like my legs could hardly hold me. I kept asking myself, why? Why was I the one who had been betrayed, yet I was the one being punished? Why was I the one who was cast aside? My husband no longer wanted me. My son turned his back on me too. Was I really just an extra in my own life? I wandered down the street in a daze, each step heavy with sorrow. My mind replayed everything I had given, everything I had endured. And now, I was alone, utterly alone. Tears poured down my cheeks uncontrollably as if they had been waiting too long to be released. A wave of hopelessness engulfed me. My heart felt hollow and lifeless. Without thinking, I climbed over the railing of a bridge and threw myself into the river below, using both my hands and feet to push away from the edge. The icy water swallowed me whole, rushing over my body, filling my mouth and nose. I could no longer breathe. The suffocating pressure pulled me under. Everything turned black. Somewhere in the distance, I faintly heard voices shouting, "Someone jumped in! Help! Call an ambulance!" The cries grew weaker, fading into the background until all I could hear was the wail of an approaching siren. When I woke up, the first face I saw was Anna's, my closest friend. She was sitting beside the hospital bed, exhaustion etched across her face. But she hadn't left me. She had been there the entire time. Seeing my eyes flutter open, she leaned in quickly, her voice filled with concern. "You're awake. How are you feeling? Are you in any pain?" Her worry warmed my heart, and my eyes filled with tears again. In that moment, I realized I wasn't entirely alone in this world. Someone still cared about me. I shook my head slightly, trying to hold the tears back. She gave me a look that was half angry and half heartbroken. Do you have any idea how lucky you are? If the rescue team had been even a little later, you'd be nothing but ashes by now. I I didn't think I would go that far, I murmured, my voice weak. She sighed and shook her head. Enough. What you need now is rest. Stop overthinking everything. There are plenty of flowers in the world. Why cling to just one? Mark is just another man with two legs. He's not worth this. Ever since I began suspecting Mark of cheating, Anna had been my confidant. She even kept a copy of all the evidence I had gathered. I was sure she already knew why I had tried to end my life. My son, how is he? I asked softly. He was the only one I truly worried about. Anna held up her phone reassuringly. Don't worry, I haven't told your son or your parents anything. When you feel better, you can talk to them yourself. Afraid I might try something foolish again, Anna stayed by my side as often as she could. She talked with me, encouraged me, and made sure I was never left alone. A few days later, I was well enough to leave the hospital. Once I returned home, I called Mark. We met briefly at the city office and officially signed the divorce papers. Just like that, our marriage was over. As our son had wished, he stayed with Mark. Before we parted, Mark looked worn and weary. His voice, however, remained soft. Sarah, I'm so sorry for everything. I gave him a faint smile and replied, You don't need to apologize. It was your choice. Maybe I should be thanking you for letting me go. After all, you were just a passing chapter in my life. Take care of yourself. Having brushed so close to death, I began to see things differently. Mark, my son, the past, they all had their own paths. I didn't need to cling to any of them anymore. Life is short. There is no reason to spend it punishing myself for someone else's mistakes. I made a commitment to rebuild myself. I started going to bed early and waking up with the sun. I made time each day to exercise and signed up for classes to learn new skills. Without the responsibilities of family life, my days became surprisingly full. I tried out new recipes, practiced hobbies, and sometimes invited Anna over to taste my cooking. Her laughter filled the room, reminding me that joy could still exist. I thought life would continue on in that quiet, steady rhythm. But then, something happened that changed everything. That morning, I was about to head out for groceries when I saw a familiar figure standing at my doorstep. It was my son, Leo. The moment our eyes met, he burst into tears. Before I could react, he ran toward me and threw his arms around me, clinging to me, as if he were afraid I might vanish. It had been a month since I had last seen him. I missed him terribly. Seeing him again brought a warmth to my heart, but the look on his face, the distress in his posture, made me uneasy. Something was wrong. I gently wiped the tears from his cheeks and asked, What happened, sweetheart? He only cried harder. I brought him inside and helped him into a clean set of clothes. His hands trembled as I buttoned his shirt. Don't be afraid, I said softly. Tell Mommy what happened. Despite the pain he had caused me by choosing to stay with Mark, he was still my child, my own flesh and blood. And when he threw himself into my arms, everything else melted away. All the sadness, all the anger, it vanished. Because in the end, he would always be my son. Mom, Dad isn't nice to me, my son said, his voice trembling with sobs. He never buys me snacks. He doesn't play with me. He spends all his time with that lady and the baby in her belly. As I listened to his words, a deep sadness settled in my heart. If Mark could cast aside the woman who had shared his struggles for years, how could he possibly care properly for his own child? I gently stroked my son's hair and said softly, Don't worry, sweetheart. From now on, Mommy will buy you whatever you want. Mommy will play with you. He clung to me tightly, his small arms wrapped around my neck. Through his tears, he cried, I want to be with you, Mom. I don't want to stay with Dad. His words warmed my heart, and in that moment, I felt a wave of gratitude for the people who once saved me and for the fact that I hadn't given up. If something had happened to me back then, what would have become of my son? That day, I took him to his favorite amusement park. I also brought him to a fancy restaurant we had never dared to visit before. Watching the joy spread across his face, I made a decision. I would start a new life with my son. As for Mark, he not only betrayed me, but also hurt my child. He would pay for that. Soon after, I sold the house, enrolled my son in a new school, and we left that sorrowful place behind. Once we were settled, I sent my new address to Anna. I found a job nearby, and every evening after dinner, I would sit beside Leo and help him with his homework. Life was simple, but it was peaceful, and I felt content. One afternoon, my phone rang. It was Anna. "Sarah," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "You will not believe this. Mark just had a baby." As I listened, my heart, which had just begun to quiet, stirred again. I thought of the pain I had endured, of the way my son had been mistreated. My emotions began to rise. Mark, justice is not always swift, but it always comes. Just imagining the look on his face when he learned the truth gave me a strange sense of satisfaction. When I didn't respond, Anna continued, "Can you believe it? That woman really gave birth to the child. The heavens must be blind." "Anna, wait," I said calmly. "That baby may not even be his. I need your help with something important." There was a sharp gasp on the other end of the line. Anna exclaimed, "Sarah, are you serious? If Mark finds out, he will explode. This is too good." "I'm not completely sure yet," I said. "I need you to help me confirm it. But it's almost time for school to let out. I'll call you later." I ended the call as I saw the stream of children walking out of the school gates. I scanned the crowd anxiously until I spotted my son. "There you are," I called out with a wave. He ran toward me with a bright smile and leapt into my arms. As I held him close, a wave of guilt swept over me. Most children have both parents by their side, but my son had only me. "Mark, this is all you're doing. Everything. Your betrayal, your lies. It has all led to this." I looked down at my son's small, fragile frame. The anger inside me burned stronger than ever. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, noticing something in my expression. I smiled gently, brushing his hair with my fingers. "Do you miss your dad?" I asked. He shook his head firmly. "Daddy is mean. I don't want him. I only want Mommy." "All right," I said quietly. His words only strengthened my resolve for revenge. I nodded, took his hand, and we walked home together. The next morning, I called Anna. "Anna, you said Mark had a baby. Do you think you could get something like a hair sample from the boy?" "Of course," Anna replied without hesitation. "My friend happens to be the doctor in charge of that woman's care. I'll get it. No problem." She sounded confident, promising to deliver. Not long after, I received the package Anna had sent me. Inside was a single, very fine strand of hair. I carefully placed it aside, then took out a strand of hair I had collected from one of Mark's old hairbrushes during our divorce proceedings. With both samples in hand, I went to a nearby hospital and requested a paternity test. When the results came back, they confirmed what I had long suspected. Mark was not the father of that child. Still, reading those words in black and white stirred something deep within me. Even though I had expected it, I couldn't help feeling a wave of satisfaction rush through me. I calmly gathered the DNA report along with the video I had secretly taken of Chloe with her boss and mailed everything directly to Mark. Not long after that, my phone rang. Mark's voice came through the receiver, sounding much older and more tired than I remembered. "Sarah, can we talk?" I replied coldly, "No," and ended the call without another word. Shortly after, Anna called. Her voice was full of excitement. "Sarah, my friend told me that Mark and that woman had a huge fight over the child. They're divorced now." She grew more animated as she spoke. "Finally, justice is served. This is karma," I responded with a calm tone. I figured it would happen. Compared to Anna's emotional reaction, mine was much more composed. Then she asked, "Are you two going to get back together?" "Absolutely not," I answered firmly. "There are things Mark has done that I will never forgive for as long as I live." A few days later, there was a soft knock on the door. I looked through the peephole and froze. It was Mark. Although I had prepared myself for the possibility that he might show up one day, seeing him standing there still caught me off guard. My son heard the knock too and came running over. "Mom, who is it?" No one, I said, not yet sure how I wanted to handle the situation. I didn't want him involved just yet. But Mark had heard our voices through the door. His knocking grew louder and more urgent. From outside, he called out, "Leo, it's Dad. Open the door for Daddy." My son's eyes widened with disbelief. He looked at me, then toward the door. "Mom, is Dad really here?" Seeing the hope on his little face, I hesitated. My heart softened. I knelt beside him and said gently, "If you miss your dad, go see him. When you want to come home, I'll come get you." I opened the door and nudged him toward Mark. But instead of running to him, my son clung tightly to me and cried out, "No, I want to stay with Mommy." Mark watched us, his eyes brimming with tears. I looked at him with a cold gaze, then stroked my son's hair and said sharply, "He doesn't want you, and neither do I. You can go now." Mark's voice was hoarse as he murmured, "Sarah, I was wrong." Only a few months had passed, yet his hair had turned noticeably grayer. A part of me, the part that used to care, might once have reached out and held him. But now, seeing him like this brought me no sympathy, only a quiet sense of justice. When I gave no reply, he turned to our son with a pleading tone. "Leo, help Daddy. Say something nice to Mommy. She always listens to you." How shameless, I thought, trying to use our son to manipulate me again. But our son stared at him with a frown and said, "I don't want to. You're bad. You got a new kid and forgot about me. I don't want you anymore." Mark's face fell. "You're my only son. Please forgive me. All right?" He tried to win him over, pulling a large Lego set from behind his back. It was our son's favorite toy. I could see his eyes waver for a moment, tempted, but to my surprise, he pushed the box away and wrapped his arms tightly around me. "Even if Mommy doesn't want you, I don't want you either," he said angrily. "Giving me toys doesn't change anything." Hearing his words, I straightened my back and looked Mark in the eye. "You heard him. Now leave." Mark's expression darkened, and then he dropped to his knees. His body trembled and his voice choked with emotion. "Sarah, I know I failed you. I lost my mind back then, but I never stopped loving you." He paused, then added in a low voice, "Chloe had never been married, but she was pregnant. I felt responsible and thought I had to do the right thing. But now that I know the child isn't mine, I don't have to stay with her. The only one I have ever truly loved is you." When I heard his words, I couldn't help but find them laughable. He claimed to love me, yet he had slept with another woman and even abandoned his own wife for her. "What kind of love was that?" I said calmly. "Your love is too much for me to bear." Then I gently placed the toy into our son's hands and looked at Mark with quiet determination. "No matter what happens between us, he is still your child. I hope you will love him with all your heart." Our little boy clutched the toy tightly, his eyes filled with fear and confusion. In a trembling voice, he asked, "Mom, are you leaving me too?" My heart broke at his words. I quickly pulled him into my arms and stroked his soft hair, forcing a smile to reassure him. "Sweetheart, no matter what happens, you are the most important person in the world to me. I will always be here for you, always by your side." Hearing this, he nodded slowly, not quite understanding everything but sensing my sincerity. Then he whispered, "Mom, I want you, not Dad." Mark hurried over, clearly alarmed by what he had heard. With a desperate tone, he said, "Sarah, please. You and our son are everything to me. I know I made a terrible mistake. Just give me a chance to make things right. Please, I'm begging you." He reached out, trying to take my hand, but I quickly stepped back, clutching my son tightly with a look of pure disgust. I said coldly, "Don't touch me. You're filthy." Mark's face went pale. His eyes searched mine, full of disbelief and pain, as if he couldn't accept that the person standing before him was no longer willing to forgive. I took a deep breath and added, "It's over. My family has already begun arranging introductions for me. If you meet someone suitable, you should move on too. As for our son, if he's willing to stay with you, I won't stop him. But if you fail to take proper care of him, I will take back full custody." Mark's voice rose in desperation. "Are you really not willing to give me another chance? Just one?" I looked at him, my voice steady and firm. You don't deserve one. With that, I took my son's hand and led him back into the house. As the door closed behind us, the silence made everything clear. Some mistakes, once made, cannot be undone, and some people, once lost, are gone for good.